Well, thanks a lot for the invite. I'm really, really happy to be here and to see so many people that decided to attend this event. It's a good sign. It's always a good sign to see people that are willing to learn and discuss how to better protect children that come to Europe. I always say the issue of migrant children going missing has been underestimated for too long, and I'm really glad that here in Austria, indeed, this is not the case. And I'm really grateful to the Ombudsman, to Christina, for inviting me here, because I think that we have done a great job together, and I think there is much more that we can do, and it's clear there is a will here to make sure that every child is a child, as you say, and every child is protected as they deserve. So thanks a lot. I will start my presentation with a little description on who we are and Missing Children Europe. We are the European Federation for Missing and Sexually Exploited Children. We are a membership organization. We have 30 members in 25 European countries, including Austria, where our member, Rat Out Draft, is doing an amazing job with the Hotline for Missing Children that I will introduce in a while. We have a mission that is to provide the link between research, between advocacy, and also the organizations in the ground, in order to prevent children from going missing, support children and families in this situation, but especially protect children from all violences and abuses that could lead to or come from the fact of going missing. So we have several international projects that we run. I just want to mention here two. One is the cross-border network for family mediators. So parental abduction is one of the main reasons why children in general go missing in Europe. It's around 36% of all cases reported to our network. And we believe in extrajudicial solutions that may sometimes be the most beneficial for children and for finding a compromise between two parents that find themselves in a very, very difficult situation. So our network of mediators helps solving international cases of parental abductions. And then we also run the Hotline for Missing Children, the European network of hotlines for missing children. The hotlines are responding to the number 116000. I hope everyone in the room knows that. It's a number that has been activated here in Austria as well and is active everywhere in Europe, which means that wherever you are, if you call this number, you will be connected to professionals that are able to provide you 24 hours per day, 7 days every week, with psychological, administrative, and legal support when you are involved in a case of a child going missing, but also when you are a child yourself and just need help. So it's the same number in 30 European countries, because while the network was first supposed to be only in the EU, we have expanded it now also to Albania and Serbia, and also to Switzerland very soon. As I said, it offers this psychological support, but most importantly, we work in close cooperation with the law enforcement. Not in any way we want to substitute the law enforcement and the amazing job that they are doing, but law enforcement can, as it was mentioned before, benefit a lot from the cooperation with NGOs, and this is what we are trying to do, support law enforcement in better supporting children and families in these situations. But here I am to speak about the topic of migrant children in Europe and their disappearances. So here I thought just to bring to you a couple of numbers that is always good to have in mind when we talk about the matter. In 2015, more than 96,000 unaccompanied children applied for asylum in Europe. Why am I saying this? Because we have, unfortunately, numbers only of those that applied for asylum. We don't have the numbers of all the migrant children that arrive in Europe, because practices change a lot from country to country. So we know for sure that 96,000 arrived, but we actually know that many more are the children that arrive in Europe, and probably in a more vulnerable position because we have very little information about the others. In 2016, 1 in 4 asylum seekers in the EU were children. I mean accompanied and unaccompanied, which is probably the highest number of children in proportion to all migrants that we ever had in Europe. It's also very worryingly to realize that more than 50% of them were younger than 14 years old, which is also unprecedented. We see younger and younger children coming, especially, as you can imagine, these numbers are very much influenced by the Syrian crisis. In Italy, and this is just an example, not because I'm Italian, but because it's very, very new and shocking to see that 91% of all children that arrived in Italy last year, were unaccompanied. So more and more vulnerable people coming through the very dangerous central Mediterranean route. We don't have all data on how many migrant children go missing in Europe. I receive this question all the time. We don't have it. And this is the first problem. We don't know how many migrant children go missing. How? Because most of the cases, these disappearances are not reported, or if reported, they are reported for practical reasons, because reception centers need to say how many children they are hosting, rather than because we want to follow up on all the cases of migrant children going missing. So we have some data that for us it's important to understand a little bit what's going on, but we don't have all the data, and that's really dangerous. So we know, for example, that in 2015, Europol said 10,000 children, at least unaccompanied, went missing, but we think this is definitely an underestimate. We know that in 2016, Oxfam reported that in Italy, 28 children went missing every day. In Sweden, 7 to 8 unaccompanied children went missing every week. A recent report was talking about 2 classes, school classes of unaccompanied children going missing per month. Imagine if these children were Swedish or Austrian. What would we do? We would go to the streets. In Germany, in August 2016, they were talking about 2014 and 15, of course, but they were saying, the police was saying there that almost 9,000 unaccompanied children were reported and registered as missing in Germany alone. So now you understand why for us the 10,000 of Europol is an underestimate. But I want to strengthen here the fact and highlight here the fact that often we think that children go missing because they want to move on. So we say, and this is a classic also issue in Austria as well, we know that there are some countries that are considered as countries of transit, and where we know that indeed children are either unwilling or convinced that it's better for them to move on. So we often say, it's okay if they go. We often justify our inaction because we don't want to stop them. It's their plan and we cannot do anything against it. But when we see all these children going missing in Germany and in Sweden, and I can tell you there are high number in the UK as well, it's just that I didn't put it on, where is the justification again? So these are the countries where these children are supposed to stay, and they are going missing there as well. So maybe it's better not to assume that children go missing because they want to move forward. Maybe it's better to look into every specific case and try to understand why this child went missing and what did I do wrong, what did we not offer to this child, and what can we do to avoid that these children are incurring in risks for their health and mental health as well, while moving forward. But I will come back to this. So the Summit project was a project that was co-funded by the Commission, the European Commission. And here again, I want to recall what the President said before. The European Union offers a lot in terms of resources for better protecting children to NGOs as well, but also to countries that then, through the national programs, and those countries and the countries then decide to whom these funds go. And there are more and more funds for the protection of migrant children. So there is actually some resource that we can use from the European Union to better protect children. And this was one example. We had this project launched in 2014, where actually we committed to understand what is the problem of missing children? Because if you can imagine, 2 years ago, no one was, 2 years ago and 2 years and a half, no one was really talking about the problem of unaccompanied children going missing. But we know for a fact that children are being missing unaccompanied children, migrant children, since a long time ago in large numbers. It's just that now more and more children are coming to Europe. So we decided to launch this project to study why migrant children go missing, what happens to them, and what are the current challenges in cooperation between agencies that are working with unaccompanied children, what are the difficulties that exist, and what can we suggest to improve it. So we studied 7 countries, trying to mix those countries that are considered of transit often and those countries that are considered of destination. And we interviewed and cooperate a lot with many professionals, among those carers, reception centers operators, guardians, law enforcement, and also the hotlines for missing children. We wanted to have a bigger picture of their experiences. We also wanted to build bridges between those working in child protection and those working in refugee and migrants protection, because we have realized that these two worlds often work separately, while actually when we talk about children, child protection authorities should be the first one involved, because we cannot label those children as migrants and treat them differently just because they are foreigners or they're coming from third countries. These children have the same exact rights as any other child. So why, when these children are migrants, often the child protection authorities are not so much involved? So we really wanted to create the bridge between the two worlds, very separated, and try to make sure to suggest ways to better work together. So this is a question that I receive a lot. Why do children go missing? Yes, indeed, there could be an interest to apply for protection in another country. But this is often linked to the fact that in the country where they arrive, and these countries are often Greece or Italy or others, the reception conditions are extremely poor. There is not enough places in the institutionalized care that is available for them. So many are homeless. Many are in centers with adults. Many are in overcrowded centers. So often they decide to apply in another country. Some countries are also stricter than others in providing protection. And the child may be knowing this or may be convinced by others that it's better to apply for protection in another country because it will be easier. So this is indeed a reason for going missing, but we shouldn't look at this reason as a reason not to act ourselves. The lengthy and complexity of procedure is also a big reason for going missing. When you tell a child to get reunited with your aunt in Sweden, it will take up to 11 months, and we're not sure this will happen because you are from a certain nationality, that is a reason for a child to try to do that alone. So if we have procedures in some countries that don't work or work too slow, we're just encouraging children to rely to other means to go where they want. Lack of information, that was also mentioned before. Often children don't receive information on what are the possibilities for them, or receive them in a language that they don't know. And also, as they are children, they should receive this information in a way that children can understand. And this is not often the case. So not knowing what are the possibilities that they are in the country where they are, it's a problem that could push them from going missing. Not trusting authorities. We can understand that some of them come from countries where actually authorities are not to be trusted, or where the situation is a war situation, a regime situation. So as it was mentioned before, when often they see the police, they don't feel the immediate strength or push to trust them. They would feel afraid, and it's a great job to try to educate them in understanding that the police is on their side, but not only, other authorities in general. The fear of being sent back to another EU country, because we talked before about, it was mentioned before, yes, it's a European problem, yes, it is, but we shouldn't push children from country to country because we think that this is a European problem. Every country is first and foremost responsible of every child that is within their territory, and these reasons to send them to other countries, they exist, they are on a paper, yes, but we should think, is this in the best interest of the child? Which is first principle to consider when we're working with migrant children and with children in general. The fear to be sent back to the country of origin is the reason for going missing, of course. And also, I put it last, but we know that it's not so uncommon, the fact of being previously victim of traffic or of other forms of exploitation, or becoming victim of trafficking or other forms of exploitation. So what are the reasons why often we hear frustration and anger also at not being able to prevent those disappearances and not being able to respond? Because I mean, during the study we did, I really felt a lot of willingness and desire to do better, but often frustration on the feeling not to be able, not to have the means and the resources to do better, which we think we can improve. We think there is a lot that we can do. But let's see what were the most causes for not being able to respond and prevent disappearances. So lack of effective system to collect information and also centralized system. So I've often heard, especially when I was talking with law enforcement, when we have a reported case of a migrant child going missing, we don't know what to do. We don't have enough information, so I'm sorry, but we need to destine our limited resources to cases on which we can work, which is fair. But are you sure you don't have enough information? Because every child that is registered her information are stored in different places. The asylum authorities, the child protection authorities, the guardian, the reception centers. And we feel that this, unfortunately, is an obstacle to respond to the disappearances of this child, because it would be very difficult to find those information to follow up on these cases when actually this information exists and could be used. So this is a first challenge. The fact that reception conditions are poor, and so people feel often that a child actually would be better in another place rather than where they are. Guardianship system lagging behind. We have seen that in countries where guardianship works, disappearances are less because a child starts trusting the person that is committed to provide their support. And we feel also the guardian is a great link between different institutions, providing the coherence that sometimes is missing. The lack of reporting, of course. If the disappearance is not reported, we don't know who is going missing, and we don't know how to follow up on this. The fact that migrant children are treated as a lower priority, as I mentioned before, sometimes because there are not information available, sometimes because the resources are missing, sometimes because those that are supposed to report or receive the reporting are not trained to recognize the risks, and so don't believe that those cases are dangerous cases for the children involved. As I said before, assumptions that children would move anyway sometimes bring us to the decision not to act, when actually we should be able to recognize those cases that deserve our attention, immediate attention, and urgent action. The lack of training, again, as I was mentioning now, lack of training on recognizing the risks and being able to respond to these risks. The absence of a systematic risk assessment, making sure that when a child arrived in a country, we understand if this child is a victim of trafficking, if this child is at risk, and we put together a plan for the child on his individual case. No activation of systems to allow the continuation of the protection across borders. There is one system that at the moment exists that works across border for the protection of missing children, and I'm sure the law enforcement in the room know it very well, and it's the Schengen Information System. It's the only database that at the moment exists and is activable and also used by local police directly, and very fast and very, very good. It is used for cases of missing children, but when a child is a migrant child, it seems that we don't have anything in Europe that can help us to work with children across border. Why are we not thinking about systems that we would use when a child missing is an Austrian or an Italian or an English one? We don't think about using them when the child is a migrant. Also, the network of hotline for missing children is a great tool. This network is trained to cooperate across border on cases of missing children as well, and is active everywhere in Europe. Why only 2% of the cases reported to these hotlines are cases of migrant children going missing? So again, sometimes I feel we need to take a step backwards and really look at the picture, and we will realize that we can do a lot to better protect children, also in international cases. And that's why, from this study that we conducted in 2014, we have built a handbook with very concrete and practical suggestions on what to do to protect, to prevent, and to respond to the disappearance of migrant children. So in this handbook, we have put different information. This handbook exists in English, but the core of it, thanks to the Ombudsman here in Austria, has been translated in German as well. And I'm really, really happy about this because, first of all, it shows great sensitivity of the Ombudsman to doing something concrete to support professionals in better protecting children across Europe. And also it shows that when things are done in Brussels, even if they are done in Brussels, sometimes they can be used also at local level. And I'm very happy about it. When I see that happening, I'm very happy. We have translated it in several languages, and now is available in German as well, as I said, and is available on the website of Missing Children Europe. So it's Missing Children Europe/Summit, and there you can find the German translation. So what did we put in there? We've put templates, checklists, and guidance. So this is material that can be used by any of the professionals working with children, because there are tools, as I said, of templates and checklists that can be used directly, but it can also be used for training, because it contains a lot of information about unaccompanied children themselves, risk assessment, what could be done to improve interagency cooperation. So it can be really used for both. And here I would like just to mention a few things that are addressed by this. I hope I still have time. Oh, 5 minutes. Two things that are addressed by this toolkit, and that could be really, that I hope you will bring home as things to think about in your everyday work. So we've said that one of the challenges is the lack of effective system to collect information. What we suggest, and it's also suggested in this toolkit, is to create a system to collect information that is coherent and is shared by everyone that works with these children, centralized and accessible with the appropriate safeguards by all of those that are working for the protection of children. We think that this information should be collected through standard forms used by everyone involved in the situation of a child, that every child corresponds to one personal file where everything is stored, so in case of any situation dangerous for the health of this child, it would be very easy to retrieve the important information to follow up on that. Here in the toolkit you will find a template, for example, for collecting information and suggestion on how the cooperation should work within the authorities. We have talked about the lack of training of professionals and also the unclear division of responsibilities. What we have seen is that, first of all, investing in training really changes, because especially in these last months, we have seen a huge income of children, and we had to respond quickly. And in many countries, a lot of people have been enrolled, but not without appropriate training, because it was important to really react fast. And so training now that the situation may be a little bit calmer and a little bit more manageable, it will be important to invest on this and to make sure that everyone knows what to do. But also, we think it's extremely important that every agency in contact with the child is perfectly aware of what are their responsibilities towards the child and towards the other agencies as well. So we have seen that wherever there is a protocol of cooperation between all the agencies involved in the situation of a child, things get better, because everyone knows what do we have to do, what we can expect that law enforcement, guardianship institution, those reception centers can do. Everyone is also held responsible for this. I can go to them and say, why didn't you do this that was written in the protocol if it's formalized? And we've seen this really makes a difference. To have local, regional, or national protocol really improves the situation of children in the country. This is an example that it's not in the toolkit, but is available online. It's just an example. It's not really readable, but it's just a way to show how if you put together the different actors involved in the protection of children and you spell out what everyone could be responsible for, and you can see how clear this could be. Of course, then application it could be a bit more complicated, but it's a great start for better cooperation. So these were the examples that we had in terms of prevention and response, but this is really just something that we have done and could be done at local level and national level here in Austria, for example, as well. We have seen that there is no systematic risk assessment. It's important to know who's responsible for this. So who should assess the risks to which this child is exposed? It should be done as soon as possible. It should be done with experts, not alone. For example, if the child is a victim of trafficking, the evaluation of the risks should be involving also the experts in trafficking. And it should be important to create a list of standardized indicators that are applicable in every region and in every country to be able to assess the risk against. Because the risks to which children could be exposed in Austria are different than the risks to which children are exposed in Italy or in Great Britain. And for example, in this toolkit, we have at certain points a tool for assessing the risk that is a general tool, needs to be, of course, tailored on the situation where we are working. But it mentions some things that can be universally important. One is, for example, the fact of knowing if a child arrived through the help of smugglers or not, knowing if a child is concerned about the money, which can be an indicator of the fact that he may be in huge debts with others, understanding if the child is not interested in what is going on. This can be a sign of a child that is not at ease where he is and wants to move forward. Knowing if the child was missing somewhere else before, or knowing if the child was trafficking. How to react when actually we see that there is a positive risk assessment, so there are some specific risks to which this child is exposed. Here again in this toolkit you will see a number of suggestions on what to do when actually we see that there are these risks that could help follow up in case dangers incur. One could be, first and foremost, and forgotten many times, taking a picture. You cannot imagine how in how many cases I realize that pictures of children arriving in a certain reception center are not taken, and how useful that would be in case of disappearances. Keeping the line of communication open, trying to build the trust with a child. Building trust with a child is indeed the thing that works the most to prevent children from going missing. Giving them information, and also alerting the police when we feel something is wrong with this child. As it was mentioned before, it's very important that the police is alerted and aware when there is something that we feel is not right. Making plans, showing the child there is something provided for you, there is something ready for you, we have this and this and this that you can do in the next hour, making them feel more comfortable where they are and that we care. Assumptions are dangerous, as I said. Without an individual risk assessment, we cannot assume that the child goes missing just because he wants to move forward. We need to know why this is happening, and we need to know what can we do in that specific case. Long and burdensome procedure of reporting disappearance sometimes are extremely a push factor not to report disappearance. In Italy, for example, if you want to report a disappearance, you have to go to the center police station and you have to sit there and to wait maybe a couple of hours before someone actually comes to you and takes note in writing of the disappearance. So fast-track reporting cases, especially those cases that are particularly, that have been already identified as particularly worrying, should be established to make sure that whenever something missing, the police can react fast, especially in cases of trafficking. Coordination, as I say, creating protocols, but also we have seen wherever there was a multi-agency structure created to coordinate the protection of children, migrant children, this had an increase and a huge impact on the protection of children in Europe, because sometimes, as we said, coordination is essential, but as we're all very busy in replying with urgencies to what is happening, we don't take the step back to understand what we should do and what kind of structure we should put in place to better respond. And when it comes to cross-border cooperation, it's a big issue. It's probably one of the main issues when it comes to responding to the disappearance of migrant children. We should use those networks that exist. We should use the hotlines for missing children. We should use the network of guardianship institutions. We should use the Schengen information system. But at European level, we should advocate for more and more joint investigation, especially in case of trafficking, and for more resources for centralized coordination when it comes to responding to the disappearance of children, which is what we're doing. But we would need everyone's help with your institutions, because unfortunately, most of the time, the good ideas put in forward by the institutions are often stopped by the member states. We hear it's Europe, but mostly it's member states that are too afraid of migration situation and therefore block everything that could be done to improve the situation also of children in migration. And that it is. This is actually a project that we have done with some refugee children in Brussels. They have created some little, let's say, images of what they recalled from their trip, and then they have studied how to photograph it. We are very proud of this project because it's helped us to understand better how they feel. I know that here in Austria you are doing a lot as well about this. But here, apart from the little boat, you can find also my contact details. Please don't hesitate to get in touch with me if you want to know more. I'm really happy to help. And I will continue being in touch with the Ombudsman here in Austria because I really feel this cooperation is going very well. And I hope we can do even more in the future. Thank you very much.